Charlotte Nelson is Nichol's best friend. They've known each other since high school, but only became closer years later. Even though they rarely saw each other, they regularly texted. When investigators contacted Charlotte Nelson on September 15, 2018, she only responded a day later. She immediately knew why they had called. She said it was a terrible situation, and she was worried about Nichol, but to understand what Nichol really shared with Charlotte, and how much Charlotte may have known. We need to go back to the days before the murders. August 8, 2018, the first conversation about Chris Watts. August 8, 2018, the first conversation about Chris Watts. Nichol sent Charlotte a photo of Chris Watts. It's unclear whether his children are visible in it, but Kessinger mentions them in the conversation. Nichol: he has kids. Nichol: you can tell he has a lot on his plate. She explains she's referring to the fact that Chris owns a house, is a father, and has children. Nichol: you can see everything in his life revolves around his kids. At that point, Nichol described her relationship with Chris Watts as very positive. But later, investigators specifically asked Nichol, why did you mention Chris Watts' kids? Did it bother you? Nichol: I wasn't sure if he was the man I wanted to spend my life with. I didn't like that he already had kids because he'd already experienced marriage and family. I wanted to build my own life with a man who wasn't married and didn't have children. Investigators also questioned Nichol about her dating history. They had located text messages suggesting she had interacted with other men on eHarmony. Nichol admitted she had been on the platform and chatted with a few men. However, she insisted that none of those interactions ever turned into actual dates. She emphasized that she never physically met anyone else during her time with Chris Watts. Chris had no reason to be jealous, she told investigators. But the discovery raised questions. Why was she still active on a dating site while seeing Chris? Was she unsure about the relationship or just keeping her options open? Back to Charlotte Nelson's interrogation. Investigators asked, why did Kessinger want you to delete the messages? Charlotte claimed it was only due to media pressure. But investigators weren't convinced. The timing and content of the texts told a different story. Just one day before the murders, on August 12, 2018, a seemingly casual chat between Nichol and Charlotte took on an entirely new meaning in hindsight. Nichol Kessinger texted Charlotte. Nichol: been kinda hanging out with a guy recently, keeping it a secret. Dude loves to eat pussy. Never met a man who does that. I just let it happen, LOL. Charlotte responded, trying to keep it light. Charlotte: where did you meet this man? Nichol replied. Nichol: I don't know, man. Sean never ate me out my one time. And then added. Nichol: feels like every dude I meet has kids these days. And if they don't, they have commitment issues or some BS like Sean. Investigators later returned to these messages and confronted Charlotte. They asked if Nichol had a problem with Chris Watts having children. Charlotte denied it. She wants kids herself, she said. She just had bad luck with men. But then why did Nichol speak so dismissively about men with kids? The investigators pressed further. Did Kessinger ever mention Watts' wife? Charlotte answered, no, she never mentioned his wife. But this didn't hold up. Messages recovered from Nichol's phone clearly showed she knew Chris was married, and that she discussed this with Charlotte as early as August. When questioned again about why she hadn't disclosed more earlier, Charlotte gave a different reason. Her father had passed away on August 22, 2018. A tragic event, no doubt. But investigators quietly noted that this excuse came only after contradictions had already surfaced, and that Charlotte had previously denied knowing intimate details Nichol shared via text until they were read back to her. So was grief really the reason for her silence? Or was she simply trying to distance herself when the facts no longer aligned? The inconsistencies didn't stop there. Charlotte said she knew nothing about Nichole's relationship with Chris Watts, yet Nichol had clearly confided intimate details. She said Nichol had no issues with Chris's kids, yet Nichole's texts suggested otherwise. And so the questions remain. Why did Nichol ask Charlotte to delete all messages and photos? What else was said between them, and what are we still not seeing? An online comment posted 5 years ago under a video casts new light on Charlotte Nelson. An anonymous user wrote, "I know Charlotte, she's just like NK. Also, Charlotte has a drinking problem. A huge drinking problem. Her fiancé also has a big drinking problem. Chris is dumb for getting involved with NK, because her whole friend group consists of really basic people. People in their mid to late 30s who've really messed up their lives. All they do is drink and smoke weed." What does that mean for the case? If this comment is true, then Charlotte wasn't just a friend of Nichol Kessinger, but part of a friend group that already stood out. Why does her name keep popping up in the investigation files? Nichol Kessinger, according to investigators, searched on August 13th, 2018, the day of the murders, for "Can cops trace text messages? How long do carriers store text messages?" She also Googled this while police were looking for Shanann Watts. On August 14th, 2018, at 5 p.m., just one day after the murders, she began to cover her tracks. Coincidence? Or a sign of guilt? Since Kessinger had a Verizon subscription, she might have found an article titled "Cell Phone Forensics: Powerful Tools Wielded by Federal Investigators." Verizon only stores the content of text messages for 3 days. After that, they are permanently deleted, unless the police obtain a court order for data preservation. If Kessinger read the article, she would have known that after 3 days, no message content can be retrieved. Articles are all linked in the video description. Previously deleted messages are being recovered, but here's the problem. Investigators can only access the messages that Nichol saved as screenshots and passed on. Why is the rest missing? Did she only save specific chats on purpose? Or were messages deliberately deleted that she didn't want anyone to see? The critical question: which messages did she really show investigators? And were there others she withheld? Write your opinion in the comments. Was Kessinger really clueless? Or is there more we don't know?